Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. A day after President Biden implored Congress to send him the infrastructure and broad social spending bills to sign, the U.S. House may be voting on them today. Representative Pramila Jayapal chairs the Congressional Progressive Caucus.
We are ready to vote both bills through and really deliver some incredible things for people across the country.
Biden's domestic policy package includes assistance for health care, education, child care, and home care for elder Americans. It provides more than $500 million in tax breaks encouraging cleaner energy and other climate investments. Democrats also put back paid family and medical leave that was previously dropped. The social spending package is roughly $1.75 trillion. The infrastructure bill possibly up for a vote today is $1 trillion. The Biden administration has released the details of new vaccine requirements estimated to cover 100 million workers. It's a key part of President Biden's efforts to get more Americans vaccinated. NPR's Andrea Hsu has details.
The administration is rolling out two rules simultaneously. The first one from OSHA, the Federal Workplace Safety Agency, is
Hello?
Hi, is this Josh Pennington?
Yeah, this is him.
Hi, Josh. This is Edwin. I'm calling from Burbank Urgent Care.
Yeah.
Hi.
You cut out there. You cut out there. Sorry, what was that?
I said you were just at our clinic.
Yeah.
Burbank Urgent Care.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know we're getting a little cut off here, so I'll make it quick. I know you wanted your X-ray results.
Yes.
Emailed to you.
Yes.
Okay. So I have your email here. If you can make it out, PENNIJOS000@yahoo.com.
Yep.
Okay, I'm sending it over now, but you need a password to access these reports.
Okay.
So but if you're ready, I can give you the password now, or I can call you back.
Yeah, I'm ready. Go ahead.
Okay, so the password is in capital letter B, as in boy,
Yeah.
and then 021794, which is your birthday, 021794.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Alrighty, I'll be sending those over in about 2 minutes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.
some 84 million workers at private companies. Employers must ensure that their workers are fully vaccinated by January 4th of next year, or that they produce negative COVID tests at least once a week. Companies must pay workers for the time it takes to get vaccinated, but they are not required by OSHA to pay for testing for workers who decline the vaccines. The second rule applies to some 17 million workers in hospitals, nursing homes, and other healthcare settings. Those workers must get vaccinated by January 4th with no option to test instead. Andrea Hsu, NPR News.
Britain has become the first country to authorize an antiviral pill for COVID-19. It's given as soon as possible after a person's been or tested positive for coronavirus and within 5 days of the onset of mild or moderate COVID symptoms. On the heels of President Biden's big trip to Europe in the past few days, Vice President Kamala Harris is traveling to Paris next week. NPR's Asma Khalid has details.
This is Kamala Harris's third international trip as vice president. But unlike the first two, where she focused on bilateral relationships, the trip to Paris will be the first where she's the top White House official on the international stage. She's expected to get FaceTime with some 24 world leaders. The vice president will deliver an address to the Paris Peace Forum and participate in an international conference on Libya. Harris will also hold a bilateral meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron. It's part of a full-court effort to repair the United States' relationship with France, which suffered a rocky patch because of a deal the U.S. struck with Australia over nuclear-powered submarines. Asma Khalid, NPR News.
This is NPR. Disappointing results for Democrats in this week's elections, like losing the governor's race in Virginia, may have lit a fire under them. At least President Biden hopes so. He said yesterday voters want Democrats to, quote, get things done.
people need a little breathing room. They're overwhelmed. And what happened was, I think we have to just produce results for them to change their standard of living and give them a little more breathing room.
House Democrats want to pass legislation that commits resources to child care, cheaper drugs, better infrastructure, and fighting climate change. And they say a vote is possible today. NPR congressional correspondent Kelsey Snell is on this one. Good morning, Kelsey.
Good morning.
So House Democrats say the bill is done. What's in this version?
Well, this version is very similar to previous versions that we've seen. As you said, it does have measures like making childcare more affordable and easier to access. It has more than $500 billion to address climate change and funding for universal pre-K and affordable housing, among a lot of other things in this bill. But this new version also includes 4 weeks of paid family and medical leave and a new, much higher cap on state and local tax deductions. It was from a deal that was put together kind of to allow more Democrats to come on board. There was also a deal to allow some negotiation on the cost of drugs for Medicare patients, including a $35 monthly cap on expenditures on insulin. You know, the paid leave and prescription drug provisions have been left out of earlier versions of this framework, but they have a lot of support among House Democrats.
House Democrats, but would this pass in the Senate?
Well, possibly not exactly this version. You know, Joe Manchin of West Virginia still has issues with the paid leave portion. He says he wants to take it out and deal with it on a bipartisan basis. And Senators Bernie Sanders and Bob Menendez have a very different way of dealing with state and local tax deduction, which many critics say is a tax cut that mostly helps the wealthy. Plus, there's a whole process of making sure the bill sticks to Senate rules, and most Democrats say they think other elements like funding for immigration reforms could be stripped out of the bill that way.
How are Republicans characterizing their wins this week?
Well, you know, I've heard some say that they feel vindicated. They say Democrats are pursuing spending that they expect will make inflation worse, and they say all of the fighting between Democrats and the lack of action on this bill gives Republican candidates plenty to run against. You know, either way, they see a compelling narrative that they hope will win back voters who fled the party in 2020. They also see a chance to really make culture wars a focus of this election. You know, the concept of critical race theory and parental control of education became central in the Virginia governor's race, despite the fact that teachers and school boards say that critical race theory isn't currently being taught in Virginia schools. But that kind of messaging really got people excited, Republicans say, and that's something Democrats are watching closely.
NPR congressional correspondent Kelsey Snell. Thank you, Kelsey.
Thanks for having me.
If, like me, you live with teenage boys, you might well be under the impression that you live with the creatures with the biggest appetites the world has ever produced. However, they cannot in fact compete with whales, the largest animals ever to have lived on Earth. Blue whales can be almost 100 feet long, and they have a whale of an appetite. NPR's Nell Greenfield-Boyce reports on a new study showing that scientists have long underestimated just how much these giants can eat.
Certain whales, like blue, fin, and humpback whales, eat huge quantities of tiny shrimp-like krill. These whales gulp big mouthfuls of water and use bristly plates in their mouths to filter out the prey. Matthew Savoca is a biologist at Stanford University. He recently wondered, how much can these whales gobble down?
I remember thinking, oh, well, we must know this. You know, this is something that seems like a basic question, and these are some of the most charismatic animals really in the history of life on Earth.
He says if you just Google how much does a blue whale eat, you'll get an answer, but
what I was surprised to find out is when I dug into where that answer came from, it didn't actually come from living, breathing whales in the wild.
All he could find were guesses based on extrapolations from the caloric needs of smaller animals or the stomach contents of dead whales that had been hunted.
But of course, that's just a snapshot from, you know, a morning of feeding or something like that, depending on when the whale was caught.
Savoca realized that it was possible to get much better estimates by monitoring tagged whales as they fed on swarms of krill. He and his colleagues used underwater devices that can measure the size and density of a swarm by sending out pulses of sound.
And then the instrument listens to the returning echoes reflected back.
His group tracked hundreds of whales as they chowed down. The results in the journal Nature show that on average, these whales eat way more than expected, 3 times more. In just one day, a blue whale can eat between 10 and 20 tons of food.
That amount of food is somewhere in the range of 20 to 50 million calories. which, is a lot of calories. And that is about 70 to 80,000 Big Macs.
It's the equivalent of what a person would eat over decades. He says, given how much whale populations can eat,
how are these whales going to be able to recover when it appears that at this time they're food limited?
Krill populations have dramatically declined in recent decades. Some scientists blame the loss of whales that not only ate lots of food, but also made enormous amounts of poop. Whale poop contains iron and other nutrients. It fertilizes the ocean and helps krill. Asha DeVos is the founder of Ocean Swell, a marine conservation group in Sri Lanka. She says some researchers have talked about artificially fertilizing the ocean to boost krill and give whales more food.
I think it's really complicated, and I do think that unless it's done well, it can actually have unintended consequences that could be negative.
And she says there's plenty of other ways to help whales, like protecting them from getting hit by ships or tangled in floating nets. Nell Greenfield Boyce, NPR News.
An effort by the U.S. Justice Department called the China Initiative aims to counter the Chinese government's theft of American secrets and technology. Critics say that initiative also has created a climate of fear among Chinese Americans. NPR's Ryan Lucas reports.
At a congressional hearing last week, Attorney General Merrick Garland was asked about the Justice Department's China Initiative. He said there are two important things to bear in mind.
One is that the People's Republic of China is a serious threat to our intellectual property. They represent a serious threat with respect to espionage.
And the department, he said, has an obligation to protect the country against this threat. At the same time, he sought to assure lawmakers that the department plays things straight.
We never investigate or prosecute based on ethnic identity, on what country a person is from or came from, family.
Despite such assurances from Garland, the department's China Initiative has come under fire. Critics say the program amounts to racial profiling and has created a climate of fear among Asian Americans, particularly those of Chinese descent.
There is this fear in the community that economic espionage, that this national security threat, is just being used as a pretext.
Gisela Kusakawa is a staff attorney for the civil rights organization Asian Americans Advancing Justice. She and other advocates say that fear runs especially deep among scientists at American colleges and research labs. University of Arizona professor Jenny Lee led a recent survey of scientists at leading U.S. research universities. One thing she heard back from Chinese Americans and Chinese nationals in the U.S. doing research was this.
They are concerned that any connection with China, this may mean collaborating on a research project, visiting China, applying for a grant, or working and collecting data, analyzing data, any extent of that would open themselves up for potential investigation by the FBI.
Justice Department officials say they are sensitive to such concerns, that their investigations are based on an individual's conduct, not ethnicity. In the last 3 years, the department says it has brought 16 economic espionage and trade theft cases with a link to China, 12 involving alleged grant fraud. So far, 8 have ended in convictions or pleas. But there have been failures as well. Perhaps most notably, a grant fraud case brought against a Tennessee professor, En-Ming Hu, who was ultimately acquitted on all counts. Ryan Lucas, NPR News, Washington.
The pandemic story changes every day, so we've got you covered. Larry Mannel's daily podcast, COVID in LA.
I wanted to know if the virus going to go dormant.
At LAist.com, on the KPCC app, and wherever you get your podcasts.
We're all in this together.
Good morning, it's Thursday, November 4th. I'm Suzanne Watley, and you're listening to the LA Report from KPCC and LAist.com. Here's your morning news. Southern California Edison is gradually moving most of its customers to a different billing plan, one that is based on when they use power. KPCC's Sharon McNary has more.
It's called time of use billing. If Edison powers your home in Orange or San Bernardino County, you might already have been switched to the new plan. Many Riverside, LA, and Ventura County homes will be switched too over the next few months. Under time of use billing, customers pay less for power when wind and solar energy are plentiful. like overnight and early in the day. Power will cost more when demand peaks from 4 to 9 p.m., which is also when wind and solar energy are falling off. State regulators want Edison to make this shift. It's meant to increase the use of wind and solar energy and reduce stress on the power grid during peak hours. The utility says customers can lower their bills by using less air conditioning in the afternoon and evening and by charging electric vehicles overnight. Customers can opt out any time though, and if it costs a customer more in the first year, Edison says it will refund the difference. I'm Sharon McNary.
Los Angeles Unified School District students who are 12 and older must be fully vaccinated against the coronavirus by January 10th to continue with in-person learning. However, the same mandate is not being applied to younger students yet. That's despite this week's federal approval of the Pfizer vaccine for kids ages 5 to 11. Still, the district is encouraging parents to get the younger students vaccinated and will make shots available through its own clinics. Here's school board member Nick Melvoin.
So the stationary clinics where parents can sign up, and on weekends they'll get their children vaccinated. That will have availability for 5 to 11-year-olds in the next few days. And then the vaccination clinics that will go into middle and high schools will start to make their way to elementary school as well.
The vaccine mandate won't be applied to LAUSD students 5 through 11 until the state requires it. That is expected to happen once the federal government fully authorizes the vaccine rather than the emergency permission in place now. It does raise questions, though, about having mixed mandates in middle schools where most students are 12 and older, but some are still 11 years old. Board says that the board hopes encouragement combined with easy access to the vaccines will be enough to inspire parents of eligible children to get their kids inoculated against the coronavirus. Headed to the neighborhood watering hole tonight, you'll have to show proof of vaccination against the coronavirus if it's in LA County. Today marks the start of a countywide mandate that requires patrons and employees in an indoor bar, winery, brewery, nightclub, or lounge to show proof of full vaccination and present a photo ID. As for restaurants, it is recommended but not required. An LA County Sheriff's deputy who killed a driver indoor walk is on trial for manslaughter right now. KPCC's Frank Stoltz says he is the first county law enforcement officer to be tried for an on-duty shooting in more than 2 decades.
Deputy Luke Liu is on trial for fatally shooting 26-year-old Francisco Garcia. Liu walked up to Garcia in his car at a gas station after the deputy determined it was stolen. In his opening statement, prosecutor Chris Baker said security camera video shows that as Garcia began to slowly drive away from Liu, the deputy ran alongside the car and fired wildly, even though Garcia presented no threat of serious injury or death to anybody. Defense attorney Michael Schwartz said Liu fired from beside the car after it hit his knees, and because he believed Garcia was reaching for a gun in the back seat. While there was no gun, the question for the jury will be whether the deputy reasonably believed there was a threat. Covering criminal justice, I'm Frank Stoltz.
Quick look at temperatures today at the beaches, upper 60s, farther inland in the 70s and low 80s. Thank you for listening to the LA Report. I'm Suzanne Watley. Join us again next time. Meantime, read more news at LAist.com and listen live at kpcc.org.
This program is made possible in part by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.
The jury has been seated in the trial of 3 men accused of murdering Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia. He was a black man running through a neighborhood. The defendants are 3 white men who took it upon themselves to chase him and now plead self-defense. 1 black man will be the only person on a nearly all-white jury. NPR's Debbie Elliott reports.
After weeks of intense questioning, prosecutors and defense lawyers spent Wednesday exercising their peremptory strikes to narrow the jury pool to 12 plus 4 alternates. But after the defense eliminated all but 1 prospective black juror, prosecutor Linda Dunikoski stood.
Understand the status motion.
Yes, Your Honor, at this time. Dunikoski argued that defense lawyers unconstitutionally removed black members from the jury pool because of their race.
The defense struck these jurors, and in this case we're talking about the 11 African
African-American jurors because of racial bias.
She asked Judge Timothy Walmsley to reinstate some of them. But first, he heard from attorneys for the defendants, father and son, Gregory and Travis McMichael, and William Roddy Bryan. The three neighbors face charges including murder, aggravated assault, and false imprisonment for chasing Ahmaud Arbery with pickup trucks, cornering him, and shooting him to death in a struggle. They say they suspected him in recent break-ins. Nearly all the potential jurors had seen graphic cell phone video of the killing, recorded by defendant Bryan, and many indicated they thought Arbery was targeted because of his race and had negative opinions of the defendants. Greg McMichael's attorney, Laura Hogue, argued the defense struck jurors because of their fixed opinions, not their race.
We struck 13 white people to this the number of 11 African Americans, and those were based on the same reasons, Your Honor, the same strong-rooted bias.
Bryan's lawyer, Kevin Goff, said he was just doing his job.
I have a right as a defense counsel not to believe that answer. And that has nothing to do with whether he's black, white, or Martian.
In the end, Judge Walmsley agreed in part with the prosecution's argument.
This court has found that there appears to be intentional discrimination in the panel.
But he said the law prevented him from reinstating black members to the jury pool because defense lawyers were able to cite race-neutral reasons for striking them. He called it a difficult balance.
One of the challenges that I think counsel recognized in this case is the racial overtones in the case.
So a jury of 11 white people and one black man will weigh the testimony and evidence and the defense argument that they acted in self-defense. That in a county where African Americans make up more than a quarter of the population. For some, the image of a nearly all-white jury sitting judgment in South Georgia harkens to another time.
I mean, come on, people. Come on.
Barbara Arnwine is with the Transformative Justice Coalition.
It hurts. I mean, we know how biased the system is. We know how big a fight, what an uphill fight this is to get justice for Ahmaud. But my goodness, that was chilling.
For Arbery's family, the jury makeup is a blow. His mother, Wanda Cooper Jones.
I was very shocked that we only had one black African-American man. I mean, that was just devastating.
Opening statements are set for Friday morning. Debbie Elliott, NPR News, Brunswick, Georgia.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Coravin. Explore any bottle of wine at any time with Coravin's Wine by the Glass systems, which keep wine fresh so every pour tastes like the first. Learn more and explore at Coravin.com. Coravin, everything is open.
Hello, NPR. We're the Lightning Rods from Durango, Colorado.
We're taking our homemade camper boat down the mighty Mississippi, and we're officially halfway, having just passed Cairo, Illinois.
This podcast was recorded at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday, November 3rd. Things may have changed, but hopefully we'll be another day closer to New Orleans.
And more!
I love that.
Really cute.
That's like one of those things you dream of doing, right? Go down the Mississippi River.
Let's just hope that those parents have a lot of snacks.
Hey there, it's the NPR Politics Podcast. I'm Asma Khalid. I cover the White House.
I'm Domenico Montanaro, Senior Political Editor and Correspondent.
And I'm Mara Eliason, National Political Correspondent.
And last night, elections were held across much of the country, including two key governor's races in New Jersey and Virginia. In Virginia, Republican Glenn Youngkin won over Democrat and former Governor Terry McAuliffe. In New Jersey, it was expected to be this decisive win for Democrats, but the race still remains too close to call. So let's focus first on Virginia. Obviously, big themes were education, schools, vaccine mandates, but wrapped up into all of this, it felt, was this focus on culture war issues.
Well, I think that culture war issue you're talking about is wrapped up in education.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, I think that, the way it was talked about as far as how children are taught about racism in schools, at school board meetings, you saw mostly white conservative parents, dominating. called this a racist dog whistle. And I think what you saw was Glenn Youngkin, the Republican, really run a clever race where, he'd at one point go on Fox News and sound like he was using right-wing talking points, and then his ads, for those who might not have seen his appearances on Fox News, certainly seemed to show this softer side, suburban, non-offensive dad wearing a sweater vest and, donning a smile.
So a bit of code switching there.
Racial dog whistles or racial culture war issues have been a feature of Republican campaigns for our entire lives, even Domenico and my entire lives, long as they are.